The microphone was off. The microphone was off the first time. It's fine. It's fine. Welcome back, everybody. It's good to have you here. I was going to film this video outside, but when you see the blooper reel, you will understand now why we are inside. So in this video, I actually wanted to present to you this concept, this idea of a breathing ecosystem. So when I think about a breathing ecosystem, I essentially consider it to be a representation of an individual's breathing health, breathing habits, and the way that they affect each other and hold themselves together. And having an idea about how our breathing habits affect each other and then affect the ecosystem is going to give us a good idea of what to do when we want to improve these things. Because what's going to happen is our breathing ecosystem is essentially going to come together whether we are aware of it or not. And when that happens, when it comes together by chance rather than by virtue of design, it's not always the healthiest for the individual or the optimal place to build from an athletic or performance perspective. So throughout the video and throughout this entire work, what we really want to keep in mind is that our breathing ecosystem, our breathing health, is something that is this fluid organism. It is not this concrete feature of biology. And so, yes, keep it, hold it with you. So let's get it going. So the state and health of an individual's breathing ecosystem is essentially going to answer questions like, is that person able to breathe comfortably through their nose? Or do they have to breathe through their mouth? What is their respiratory rate? Do they have light breathing or heavy breathing? And this goes for at rest and during exercise. So what is the threshold for their breathlessness? Are they likely to experience breathlessness often? So other questions it answers, is that person able to breathe comfortably using their diaphragm? Or instead, are they stuck in that upper chest breathing, that nervous panic breathing? And then on that note, because our breathing has such a large tie to our nervous system, is that individual's breathing health keeping them in a state of fight or flight? Or instead, is our breathing actually aiding in our ability to help ourselves relax and bring us down from that state of fight or flight? And so all of these questions that get answered all feed back into maintaining those same habits that created them, whether those habits are good or bad. And so we're going to go deeper into the mechanics of how this happens with several of the more influential aspects of our breathing health. So a quick note, the fact that our breathing habits have such a large influence on each other actually works both in our favor and to our detriment if we're not aware of it. And the reason that this is a good thing is that we only need to change a few small handful of fundamental parts of the breathing ecosystem that have more of a control over the rest. And so let's get started on why literally right now. So first we need to talk about a topic that's going to come up a lot, and that is the importance of carbon dioxide in our breathing health. Now CO2, or I'm just going to say CO2 for short, so we're not saying carbon dioxide over and over again. So CO2 plays several important roles in our body, but for the purposes of today's video, in regards to holding together our breathing ecosystem, CO2 is our body's main drive to breathe. CO2 indirectly dictates our body's respiratory rate. So when you hold your breath, it is the buildup of carbon dioxide in your body that makes you want to breathe again, not the lack of oxygen. So our bodies have a tolerance to CO2. They have a level of CO2 that they are happy with and want to maintain because our bodies want to maintain homeostasis and balance. So when an individual has an amount of CO2 in their body that is greater than that body is used to, our respiratory rate increases so that we will blow off that excess CO2. And that's why when we exercise, our body metabolizes more CO2 is produced as a result of that, and so our respiratory rate increases. So having a healthy tolerance to CO2 does several things for us in regards to our breathing ecosystem and breathing health. Now this is a little bit of an oversimplification, but it can help to think about things like this. As our tolerance to CO2 goes down, threshold for breathlessness goes down, and breathing will become heavier and more frequent so that we can, again, keep that CO2 low because we have a low threshold. There's also going to be more instances for breathlessness in this state. And then as CO2 tolerance goes up, those metrics improve. So breathing gets lighter, respiratory rate normalizes, and there are fewer instances of breathlessness because now, again, our threshold is higher. This is why raising our CO2 tolerance is such an important part of improving our breathing ecosystem and breathing health, because it affects this many aspects of our breathing. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to get an idea of where our body's tolerance to CO2 is already. And there's a simple test to do that, and that is a BOLT test. It is a blood oxygen level test. Now, this is not a test of how long you can hold your breath for. Instead, this is a test, essentially, of how long it takes your body and brain to respond to the fact that you have stopped breathing. And so you can think of it as like an indirect test to carbon dioxide. So this test consists of a regular breath in, a regular breath out, pinch the nose, hold the nose, and then count the time in seconds that it takes for your body to tell you to breathe again. This might be the psychological feeling like you'd like to breathe, like the moderate air hunger where you're like, I could definitely take another breath. Or instead, if your body is trying to get you to breathe, like if you have involuntary contractions of the diaphragm, or if you start swallowing, as well, the test would also be over. Now, whatever number that is, having that number is going to give you some idea about where your breathing habits have you already. So 17 to 23 seconds is a healthy average in most cases, but only compare yourself to yourself. It's important to remember that the BOLT score is just a tool. It's indirect, it can fluctuate, it can be stubborn to move, and it can be influenced by several different factors, including your thoughts and opinions about that number. So don't put it on a pedestal. Don't think that a low number or stubborn number means anything about you or your ability. So once you have that number, you can kind of use that as like an indirect indicator of where your breathing mechanics are at. You can see how your day is affecting them. You can see how specific activities are affecting that BOLT score. You can measure your BOLT score before and after an exercise. See what happens. So when we talk about improving our BOLT score, we are talking about improving our breathing ecosystem and vice versa. So back to looking at aspects of the breathing ecosystem, and we are going to start with nasal breathing. Now, nasal breathing at rest and during exercise is fundamental to maintaining a healthy tolerance to CO2 because 1, our nose is a smaller opening than our mouths, and 2, our sinuses place an additional resistance onto our breathing, and those things translate to a greater net CO2 in that individual. So instituting nasal breathing as a habit, both at rest and during exercise, will create the conditions over time, just a short amount of time, that will translate to a greater tolerance of CO2 and everything that comes with that greater tolerance of CO2. Here's that again. So what does this mean for dysfunctional breathing like mouth breathing or chronic hyperventilation? Because if an individual is chronically breathing through their mouths or hyperventilating, this is going to mean less CO2 in that individual's body. Then this is going to translate to a lower tolerance to CO2, and then that's going to come with all of the symptoms of having a low tolerance to CO2, like an increased respiratory rate, chronic breathlessness, maybe even that panicked upper chest breathing. And all those factors and habits feed back into the low CO2 tolerance. So you can see the vicious cycle that's getting created here. Because paradoxically, people normally think that if you feel breathless, you just breathe more air. And so while increasing your respiratory rate does blow off that excess CO2 and does alleviate the feeling of breathlessness, it does nothing to actually address the root cause of their breathlessness, which, among other things, is that low CO2 tolerance. So by improving that BOLT score, you improve the breathing, and you're happy about all of it. So let's look at another aspect of our breathing ecosystem, and that is our respiratory rate. So we want to look at intentionally controlling our respiratory rate, intentionally slowing our breathing down. So several breathing exercises actually come to mind when thinking about this, and this would be a good time to integrate, studied, practiced breathing exercises that you would do. So basically, any breathing exercise that results in a net lower volume of air over some period of time. So especially 4-7-8 breathing, which is a 4-second inhale, 7-second hold, 8-second exhale. Or maybe 2-to-1 breathing, which is where you want to extend your exhales twice that of your inhales. So if you're inhaling for a count of 4, you're exhaling for a count of 8. And as mentioned earlier, the tie between our breathing and our nervous system. Our exhales are tied to our parasympathetic nervous system. So when we want to put ourselves into a state of relaxation, when we want to take ourselves out of that fight or flight, we simply extend the exhale of our breathing. You also might do pursed lip breathing. And that's great for if you can't control your diaphragm yet, to slowly let that air out. You impose a physical additional resistance on your breathing to aid you in that. So these exercises, these extended exhales, are increasing the amount of CO2 in your body for that time that you're practicing them, and then over time, increasing your overall tolerance to CO2. Now, this approach is more direct than simply changing your breathing habits, but you can, and I do recommend that you do both, because they will both result in greater CO2 tolerance in your body. So let's take a look at what we've done so far to improve our breathing health. We've instituted nasal breathing as our standard operating procedure, and we are doing that at rest, we're doing that at exercise. We just want to be aware, we want to be sure we're breathing through our nose. Even when I'm filming these, I'm trying to remember to breathe through my nose in between talking. And it's funny too, because what winds up happening is people wind up listening to you more. First, they might ask themselves, why is this dude taking so long in between sentences to breathe through his nose? But you know what? After that, then they start listening to you. Barring some kind of surgical intervention that's needed, we want to be breathing through our nose. Number two, we've integrated some kind of breathing exercise that's going to involve light breathing. It's going to involve just a light air hunger, sitting with that air hunger. Now, this is in terms of improving our CO2 tolerance. These are some of the most basic things we could do. They are the most impactful things that we can do. Now, let's take a look at diaphragmatic breathing in our breathing ecosystem. And the diaphragm is our main breathing muscle. It's that large umbrella-shaped muscle at the bottom of our ribs. And again, as with carbon dioxide and nasal breathing, diaphragmatic breathing has many benefits as well. But for the purposes of influencing our breathing ecosystem, diaphragmatic breathing, deep breathing, is heavily tied to our autonomic nervous system, which plays a large role in regulating our body's heart rate, blood pressure, and respiration, all of which feed back into creating that individual's breathing ecosystem. Now, this kind of starts to reveal the psychological component of our breathing as well because of the nervous system tie-in. Now, there's several implications to this that can work to our favor or detriment. For example, let's take a look at some dysfunctional breathing patterns again. So if an individual already has poor breathing health, they likely have a low CO2 tolerance, so this could be difficult to take fuller, slower breaths. So what winds up happening is they have a high respiratory rate, they're likely stuck in that upper chest breathing, and because of that upper chest breathing, they are kept in that sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight response. And that nervous panicked breathing continues to keep the respiratory rate high, which keeps the CO2 tolerance low, and I'm sure you get the idea by now. Now, conversely, if we breathe with our diaphragm, we are engaging that parasympathetic nervous system. We are staying in our rest and digest response. So let's figure out how to influence this. Because if we are disconnected from our diaphragm, it can actually be very hard to breathe through our diaphragm because we want to relax. And counterintuitively, relaxation is almost the cessation of an action, In order to relax the hand, I just let it relax. There's no action I take to relax, I just let go. So in the same way, when we let go, that's the natural place that we want to breathe from, is our bellies, which is why when you see babies breathing, they're breathing in from their stomach. And if we're pent up, if we got a lot of we just don't know how to connect to our diaphragm. So the easiest way to do it, I was going to lay down here. I can't do that. I could, but you'll get the idea. You lay down. You put one hand on your stomach, one hand on your chest. And you want to see that hand moving. You want to see that lower hand moving, the one that's on our stomach. Now, you want to be sure that you're letting your diaphragm do the work. You don't really want to be pushing out your diaphragm, trying to force it as you're breathing out. Now, if you're really disconnected from your diaphragm, this can help. But ideally, what you want to do is you just want to relax and just naturally let yourself breathe from where you want to breathe from in the first place, when you don't have all the anxiety in the way. And this one can take a little bit of time. It's not as obvious of a fix as, nasal breathing, instituting nasal breathing, or just doing some breathing exercises throughout the day. But when you have those other pieces in line, you start to push the ecosystem more to in your favor. So now you're not fighting against your body as much. So again, guys, the main takeaway from this video is that our breathing ecosystem is this fluid organism. It is not this concrete feature of our biology. There is a way, I don't know if I said this before in the last video. I essentially think of it like this. If you think of yourself as this fast spinning wheel, and sometimes it feels like you can't get your hands in yourself to get to catch yourself, essentially. So what you need to do is you need to set the conditions that reduce the speed of yourself so you can hop back onto yourself. So you're essentially retake your seat in awareness in this place of reality and start to just, again, not be moved by your reality, not be shaken by it, but being able to just sit in it as from this just observational place. You do tend to come back to the philosophical, psychological reason that we are doing this and that I am trying to do this work to begin with. So, я люблю это. Это все хорошо. Спасибо. Я ценю это. I appreciate it. Thank you, guys. It's all good. Everything is wonderful. We've got this. I will see you all soon. Good evening, everybody. It's hot out. Now, the breathing ecosystem, I just want to be sure I don't have fire ants on me. The breathing ecosystem, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another video. It's hot, sweaty, and buggy, and I love it. We're darker than I want to be. Ooh, I like that. Good evening, everybody. Welcome back. It's very humid out. That's okay. Really just performance in general. It's just not optimal place. Now, first, a quick note. There's lots of tiny gnats around here. I'm sorry. You know what? I'm not sorry. You're welcome. You're welcome for the entertainment. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. It's a little humid out. It's okay. We're going to make it through. So tonight, I have another fun... Welcome back, everybody. Good evening. It's warm. It's hot. It's humid. It's okay. I'm fine with it. Welcome back, everybody. Good evening. I got bugs crawling over my camera. It's okay. Welcome back, everybody. It's hot and humid, and I'm feeling it. Welcome back, everybody. I'm glad to have you back with me here. This breeze feels beautiful. You have no idea because it's been so hot. I've been trying to film this for 10 minutes. Regardless, tonight I wanted to present to you. You're getting the back. This is the behind the scenes. This is the behind the scenes stuff. So you're welcome. I know everybody's clamoring for it. Until we start to really see the effect. I don't really like that either. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I don't like that either. Let's go back to how we are. New shirt. Welcome back. New shirt. Just as hot, just as sweaty. You're welcome. I'm wearing a different shirt because it's a different day. It's just as hot. It's so humid. It's so humid. You can see, I don't know if it's on the screen or the camera lens. Regardless, it's a new day. I have on a new shirt. I don't like that these lenses change because I really like to look at you guys.